Hi everyone, welcome. I have here in front of us a couple of 5-week-old European nightcrawler worm bins, and at 35 days of age, I think they've only been fed 3 times. Today's feeding, I believe, is going to go in here as number 4. This little bottle that I have here has got some stuff in it which is really mosquito dunks, is what it's sold as in the stores, but I'm not sure. I just saw one right there. One thing I noticed in here, a little bit unusual, because in most of my systems I don't see it lately. Hopefully it stays that way, but okay, right here's one. Little flying insects. Perhaps as we begin uncovering things, we'll start to see more. We had already been in here last time, 13 days ago, to feed, and we also at that time too started the video with me displaying here center screen that I was going to apply some of this stuff, and then I managed to set this stuff aside, and it only occurred to me, part of the way through the feeding, that I wanted to get some of this stuff in here. I also had a little 1-gallon jug in which I sort of put this stuff in to prepare, and then I just tap some of it off into my little squirt bottle here whenever I need it. And I had a little bit of that remaining. I just created some more, so I just broke out a fresh little piece of one of those donuts, and I sort of run it inside of a little tea bag sort of contraption. It's just an old sock, basically. But I don't want the little particle matter that those little donuts are made up of to be in the fluid. The mosquito dunks solution is really just this, I don't know what the actual chemical name for it is, but it's a type of bacteria. So the BTI is just the, sort of the shortened version of the long technical name for the bacteria. So to me, this is just a BTI bacteria solution, which I'm trying to use to treat my worm bins to see if I can eliminate the population of whatever it is that's flying around in here, little gnats or fruit flies. I don't think I've seen it in any other system, so it looks like we've been pretty successful in spreading this stuff around. There's another one. So they're here for sure. The reason it's important to try to get it in early is because those little guys don't burrow down deep. They're all at the surface. So what you're trying to hit with that stuff is pretty much at surface level. So once I've treated my target, I feel like it's okay to start into the disruption of the material and tilling up the system. So 13 days ago, we came in here with a whole bunch of carrot peels, and there was half a banana thrown into each system too. I already see part of the banana peel right there. I can feel some squishiness. I wondered if the squishiness was going to be banana or worms, and it would appear that the squishiness I felt was worms. A little bit of banana still sitting in there in the peel, but I'm sure that stuff ain't going to last very long. Sometimes I'm a little bit surprised. After 13 days, you might have thought that they would have done away with it already, but it's not always the case. Sometimes it takes them a little time to be able to move in on some food, even foods that they really like. Alright, hold on, little buddy. This little guy is trying to get out of the bright lights, but going in between the two bins would not be the wisest place to retreat to, because all you're going to find down there is a bunch of dry tablecloth, and that wouldn't be very good for a little worm that depends on moisture to survive and to breathe. So to find a little bit of that banana peel and even a little bit of the leftover banana is not too surprising. The carrot, the coffee, the other things that were fed last time 13 days ago were most likely going to be gone, and do seem to for the most part be gone. Some of this stuff, I'm wondering if what we're seeing here is actually some peel off of some, I don't know, perhaps off of some pumpkin or something. But I don't recall pumpkin being on the menu last time. I just wonder if I'm getting things confused like I do sometimes. Now, once again, I did sort of get preoccupied with the whole flying insect situation, and it sort of, again, made me almost forget about our little ongoing test with this compostable bag down here in bin number 1. If you had to ask me what I thought was going on here, I would have to say that I think that there's actually breakdown occurring. It's got to be, you know. I mean, just the overall mass of the thing seems a lot less than it had been when we first placed it in here. Very slow, though. I mean, if you had to really look at the calendar and say what day was it when you put that bag in with the European nightcrawlers, well, that would be somewhere almost at 250 days of age, like 237 or something like that. But I sort of deducted a few weeks, perhaps almost like a month and a half, out of what I'm considering the actual composting time of this compostable bag, because at a certain point when I was preparing to try to migrate all these worms out of these two systems out of their old home 35 days ago, since these systems are only 35 days of age, I had started into that in their previous home by trying to let the systems forage. And for me, foraging normally just means that the worms are not given any fresh food or bedding. They're just left to work down whatever residual stuff is still within their environment to try to end up with something closer to, you know, only castings. Let's just take a quick look at this banana here. So for that reason, I treat the elapsed time of actual composting of that compostable bag in a worm bin at just under 200 days of age. Sorry, let's just get a quick look at these little guys too, as long as we're so curious. I don't want to do this to them too long because they really have nowhere to hide. Being out here in the bright light is uncomfortable for them, and being on a solid object like this, their best bet would be to squirm below it somehow if they knew to do so. But I think that their impulse is just to try to dive down into the material that they're inhabiting, and in this case it's just not going to happen. We'll just check them out for a moment. I'll tell you, it sort of is like a wild kingdom down here in these bins, because I look down and I should be seeing worms, and that's expected, but then the flying insects, I'm seeing what appears to be little tiny mites all over that piece of pumpkin skin. I believe that that's pumpkin skin. And then there's, I think, another type of mite that I see just cruising around over here on the rim of the container. So there's all kinds of little creatures in here other than the worms helping out with the effort to break down all the stuff that we've given them. For some reason, when I first looked at these bins when they were still over on the shelf where I'm keeping them, I had this sense that they could really use a little boost to the amount of space that the worms have to live in. But I think the best time to make the real call on whether or not I want to add much, or perhaps not so much, is at a time like this when I'm actually sort of in an excavated mode and I can better sense how much space I really need over in the areas where I'm mounding things up high. So I still think we can go with some of my prepared bedding in here, which I'm going to definitely do. We got to leave room because the amount of food I plan on putting in here today is quite a bit. My mom sent over some yummy stuff for the worms. I didn't get to meet up with her in person, but she left this stuff at my sister's house, which is sort of halfway between here and there. So I just wanted to treat them to that delicious assortment of foods that I threw in the freezer last night. Gave the stuff a chance to freeze, and there is a good bit of it. Pretty heavy. Here I've got a couple soiled paper towels and napkins that can also go down in here as supplementary bedding. And you know, when it comes to supplementary bedding, I guess today we're going to be the candy man, because besides this stuff that we've already placed in here, got to keep in mind I want to leave room for this stuff. I believe that where did we put it? We didn't even remove it from the bins. We left them right here in the bins. I've got replacement top covering newspaper too, because I remember even during the last check-in when I reviewed the video, there was already mention of the fact that these top covering newspapers had already gotten to the point where even last time, 13 days ago, they could have easily just been reutilized as bedding down in the feeding zone, but we made the decision to let it go one more round. But today was pretty much guaranteed an upgrade in status. No longer just a top covering, but now actually right down there in the line of fire, supporting worm composting activities. So the feeding zone indicators are also quite far gone, but I don't have replacements, so with these I think we're just going to stick with them. Although, you know what, I do have one replacement. Perhaps we can stick with the one over here in bin number 1 that doesn't look quite so bad, and the one over here in bin number 2 can actually get recycled, and in can come a nice replacement. How does that sound? And you know what, I'm going to put this over where the top covering newspaper bits are, as just a little reminder, so that when I go hunting and pecking for the feeding zone indicator for bin number 2, I'll be sort of forced to look over my shoulder and go fetch the top covering newspaper too. So yeah, there's a good bit of stuff in here, and it's a whole variety of all kinds of yummy fruits and veggies of all different types. I didn't even look it over very thoroughly yesterday. It was all in little tiny packages, I guess accumulating over time. So I just tried to consolidate and join them into a single collection before putting them into my deep freeze. So I saw a big chunk of cabbage over in the other one, red cabbage. Here, this bin will give them the green cabbage. Here too, we've got some pretty good size, either apple or pear. It's hard to tell at this point which it is. And just a mix of all different types of things. Could probably sit here all day trying to identify what everything is. Oops. But in the end, it's all going to become one thing. It's all going to become worm castings. And on top of all that delicious food, as all that food gets gradually worked down by the little wormies, they're just going to have that compostable bag right there, kind of right in front of their mouths, hopefully also receiving a certain amount of attention as a result of being there. And let's not forget this delicious hunk of, well, you know, I feel kind of bad putting these little guys onto a huge mound of frozen materials, because if they do feel like they've got to get off of the banana peel for whatever reason, they would definitely be in a place that's not too good. Look at these little guys. They're all hiding underneath that little piece of fruit. So yeah, why don't we just leave it at that as far as the feeding zone is concerned, and we'll make sure we've covered up partially at least before we bring back this yummy piece of leftover banana. Here too, I think there were some other things that we sort of bumped into along the way, little bits of corn cob and stuff. And here too, I just wanted to sort of cover up a little bit before we bring this piece of banana back front and center. And over here was this an old stem of a pumpkin. To me, this thing really looks like if I were to even press it a little bit, it would just snap, which I don't want to do. I'm just going to let it go on its own pace to break down. And then the feeding zone indicator, you know, I'd like to also just examine the outskirts of both systems really quick. So let me just set this other feeding zone aside too. I'll definitely have to be reaching back behind me to go fetch all of our top covering things, including the feeding zone indicator now, because I just want to give the whole system a little bit of a stir. Get some of this stuff that might have been out on the surface, all this dry material, blend it in, give everything a fair chance at getting worked on by the worms. A little bit here, a little bit there. I guess no top covering is really perfect and is not going to prevent a little bit of moisture loss in certain places, especially when you're using a bag like I am, just a plastic bag covering things. So I like to take any stuff that's just been dry, and probably as a result of being dry, sort of neglected for a little while. Get that stuff down into action again, and probably end up subjecting some other material to sitting out here on the surface and becoming a little bit dry by not being properly covered, or I can just take better efforts to more thoroughly cover things. Although I don't mind leaving little gaps around my plastic coverings to allow for a little bit of airflow, especially when I'm using plastic bags like we're using here. In some places I'll be using bubble wrap with the bubbles facing down, which just by its nature allows for a little bit of airflow in between the bubbles of the bubble wrap, but just with a piece of plastic bag like we have here, it feels like there is the potential of the system being a little bit stifled and limited on airflow because of its fairly, thorough top covering. So usually I'll try to leave little gaps around the edges to allow for a little bit of airflow when I'm using these types of coverings. Okay, things look quite nice. I am so tempted. Why don't we just do it? I just prepared another batch, so I need to be stingy on this BTI or mosquito dunk solution. Just going to try to get a little bit more of it, even though we already added some, and then now we've also kind of stirred it all in. I don't mind putting just a little bit more in here. Even though I just prepared a fresh new batch, got to remember that this is still from the previous batch, so sometimes I wonder if the stuff kind of loses its strength, or has the potential to even become inactive or something like that. So with a fresh batch of this stuff, I feel pretty confident that what I'm putting in is what it's supposed to be, but when the stuff has been sitting around for a while, I sometimes wonder if by chance it might not even have any more of the active ingredients in it to do the job that we need it to do. Okay, so this system over here with the compostable bag gets the old feeding zone indicator returned, and the little guys over here in bin number 2 get a nice new replacement. Alright everyone, that's it for our check-in with the European nightcrawlers on day 35. Doing pretty good. Everything seems quite nice. I guess it would be nicer if there were no flying insects. That's what I would consider ideal, but who knows? Maybe the stuff that we just sprinkled in will help. Hopefully it does. Keeping my fingers crossed. Alright everyone, that's it for the check-in. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated, and if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.